Have you ever stood in the grocery aisle looking at the price of grass-fed beef and wondering, is this really worth it? Well, you are not alone. But according to one viral claim we're digging into today, that label might just be one of the most misleading things in the entire store. Okay, let's just get right into it. The source for this explainer, Dr. Eric Berg, comes out swinging with this statement. Grass-fed beef is the biggest scam on the planet. I mean, that's a huge claim, right? So let's break down the evidence he's presenting. The heart of his entire argument really comes down to this one number. The source claims that less than 1% of all the beef sold in the United States is actually 100% grass-fed from start to finish. So if the label just says grass-fed, and that stat is true, what is everybody else actually buying? To figure that out, we first have to look at the grass-fed promise and, well, the alleged gap between what we think we're getting and what's really going on behind the scenes. So here is the first major surprise from the source material. It turns out, technically, almost all cattle are grass-fed for most of their lives. The crucial difference isn't if they ate grass, but what happens in those final 3 to 6 months. That's the finishing period, and it's all about fattening them up fast. So if that finishing period is what really matters, how do companies get away with just saying grass-fed? Well, according to the source, it all comes down to some pretty major loopholes on the label. A huge part of the argument really centers on this moment right here. Back in 2016, the USDA officially dropped its definition of grass-fed. The source claims this one move created a total vacuum, and it allowed companies to use the term way more loosely, without any real regulated standard to back it up. And this leads to the most important question for any of us shopping. What is the real difference that you're seeing on the shelf? This is so important. A label that just says grass-fed, that could mean the cow was raised on a pasture but then was sent to a feedlot and finished on grains. But a label that says 100% grass-fed means the animal ate only grass and forage its entire life. According to this view, that one little qualifier, 100%, is everything. And, the confusion doesn't even stop there. Another loophole the source points to is the repeal of the country of origin rule. Now, this means that beef from other countries can be processed or even just packaged here in the U.S. and then get a product of the USA label. It just adds another layer of what am I actually buying for all of us? So this just begs the question, right? If the cows aren't eating grass during that finishing period, what exactly is on the menu at the feedlot? The answer, according to the source, is a pretty industrial diet. The source claims the main thing in their feed is something called DDGS. That's short for dried distillers grains with solubles. So in simple terms, it's the waste that's left over after GMO corn is used to make ethanol fuel. So how do you use this feed to pack 600 pounds onto a cow? Well, the source lays it out almost like a 3-step recipe. First, you've got your base, that cheat DDGS. Second, you mix in additives like limestone and synthetic vitamins. And third, you add antibiotics like monensin to boost weight gain, often followed by growth enhancers. So why use this specific feed? Well, the economic reason is pretty powerful. The source claims that because this is an industrial byproduct, 1 metric ton costs only about $150. That incredibly low cost lets them pack on massive amounts of weight on the cheap, which is, the key to the whole feedlot business model. In those growth enhancers we just mentioned, the source points to drugs called beta agonists. They're described as basically mimicking adrenaline to add up to 30 pounds of pure muscle right before processing. It's like a final push to get the most profit out of every animal. Okay, wow, that's a lot of pretty unsettling information about labels and feed. So let's shift gears and talk about the most important part. What can you actually do about it? How do you find the real thing? But before we get to the solution, the source brings up one more factor: living conditions. It's claimed that in an indoor feedlot, a 1,500-pound cow might get as little as 24 square feet of space. Now, to put that into perspective, this chart shows that little space compared to a standard parking spot, which is over 5 times bigger. Let me put it another way, and this is a really memorable image from the source material. You could fit 6 1,500-pound cows into a single standard parking space. The source argues that this kind of sedentary lifestyle is crucial for that rapid weight gain and marbling that feedlots are aiming for. So, with all this in mind, the confusing labels, the feed ingredients, the living conditions, what is the one single thing you should look for on a package of beef? According to the source, it all comes down to these exact words:
The only way to be sure the animal ate only grass for its entire life is to find a label that says 100% grass-fed. That 100% is the key. And that brings us to the end of this breakdown. We've unpacked all the claims, from the labeling loopholes all the way to the feedlot diets. And that really just leaves one final question for you. Now that you know the alleged difference, what will you look for?